We're in need of a great debate about the future.
Remember that time you guys came to stay?
Hello and welcome to our film show on Arts 24, where we're joined in the studio by critic Emma Jones. Hi, Emma.
Hello.
Now, we're starting this week with the winner of the Special Jury Prize at the Cannes Film Festival this year. It's called The Seed of the Sacred Fig by Iranian director Mohammad Rasoulof. This title refers to a type of fig tree which spreads by strangling, technically, another tree, wrapping itself around it. Rasoulof meant that as a reference to the current Iranian regime. So I think we can say this is quite a political film.
Oh, yes, it's highly political and, in fact, was directly inspired by the woman life freedom movement and features real mobile phone footage from those protests which started in Iran in 2022. So the film is about a very honest lawyer called Iman, and he's promoted to the role of judge. Now, his wife, who's played by Sahelia Golestani, is very much pleased by the new apartments this promotion gives the family, but it does put Iman, who's played by Mahsa Zara, at odds with his two daughters, Rezvan and Sana, who are young women who very much of a new generation who want greater freedom and greater rights. Now, when the girls help another young woman who's injured during these protests, plus Iman's handgun goes missing from the apartment, he becomes increasingly suspicious about both his wife and his daughters.
OK, well, France 24's Louise Dupont got a chance to speak to Mohammad Rasoulof recently, and he told her about incorporating current events into the shoot, those women life freedom protests in Iran. And here's a little taste of the film as well.
At the time the events took place, I was in prison. And so as soon as I was released, I felt the urgency, the need to go and see what was going on. So as soon as I could, I went on the internet to do some research, and I was very impressed by the audacity, the extraordinary courage of these young girls. And I'll never forget the impact those images had on me. And that's why I included them in my film.
جلوی چشام دوستامو کتک زدن گرفتنشون. خودم میدونم چی بگم چی نگم. دیگه برای من تعیین تکلیف نکنی ها. به خدا میذارم از این خونه میرم.
از یه سری اوباشی که تمام مسئلهشون لخ شدن تو خیابون حمایت میکنی. اصلا به عنوان پدر نه، به عنوان کارشناس که اندازه سن تو این سیستم بوده بهتر از تو نمیدونم چه خبره.
نه. چون توشی.
So I can imagine it was quite an emotional moment at the Cannes Film Festival when Rasoulof, who just fled Iran, screened his film there. He'd been sentenced to flogging and 8 years in prison.
Yes, they were huge scenes, I think, particularly on the red carpet at Cannes, when the director was holding aloft the pictures of his two lead actors, who, of course, couldn't leave Iran to come to the world premiere. It was a really big moment.
And as I mentioned, it won the Special Jury Prize. What did you make of it, though?
Do you know what? It was my favourite film at Cannes this year, and I think a lot of us really thought it might get the Palme d'Or. It wasn't to be, though. However, this remains an incredible drama and a really topical thriller, you know, based upon the movement, you know, the political movement that inspired it. But what really clinches it for me, though, is that it really bursts out of its social realism genre by the end into paranoid madness, which is supposed to reflect really the authoritarian Iranian regime. But it's not really the genre that you expect it to be. I don't know if that's too much of a plot spoiler.
OK, fantastic. Well, I'll certainly check it out. Well, now to another feature that's screened at this year's Cannes Film Festival out in France next week, Megalopolis, the film that Francis Ford Coppola dreamed of making for 4 decades. Let's take a look.
Imagine today's society as a branch of civilization about to reach a dead end. Is this way we're living the only one that's available to us? My plan is a city that people can dream about.
Megalopolis.
What about those standing in your way?
Power to the people!
Who like it the way it is?
People don't need dreams. People need help now.
Now, Emma, this was one of the most talked about productions in the world, even before the Cannes Film Festival. What to make of Megalopolis?
Indeed, what do you make of it? I mean, it cost $120 million of the director's own money to make, As you say, he's wanted to make it for a very, very long time, since the 1980s. And I think he said also it's been through around 300 rewrites in the process of getting the script together. So it's based upon, it's just like the Roman Republic, really, which has inspired the movie. And like the Roman Republic, Megalopolis is vast and sprawling. It's populated by very grand names from the acting world. Indeed, they include Adam Driver, Giancarlo Esposito, Jon Voight, Shia LaBeouf, Jason Schwartzman. I could go on. And I really take it as an allegory. I feel that New Rome is really like New York, and Adam Driver is the lead character. He's Caesar. He's a visionary young architect who's got great plans for the city, so I feel he represents art. And then there's Giancarlo Esposito's politician character called Cicero, who is in opposition to many of those plans. At the same time, the city seems to be threatened by a populist takeover. So does this remind you a little bit of the USA at the moment? And Coppola certainly stated that he's wanted to set a film in Rome, but really talking about the US.
OK, well, certainly epic. It got a 10-minute standing ovation at the festival when it screened. Less complimentary reactions from some critics. And then there was some controversy over alleged fake reviews that were being shown online, which were then deleted. So there's been a lot going on with this film.
Yes, it feels like it's been one thing after another for stories about this film. But I feel that the biggest criticism he's almost facing about the film is that it's crammed with so many ideas. There's Rome in there, but there's also Shakespeare. There's star-crossed lovers. There's a satellite speeding towards Earth, and Adam Driver's character can play with time. And I wonder if time really was a factor for this director. He's in his mid-80s. This might be the last film he chooses to make. Perhaps he wanted to get all his ideas up there on screen. But I feel that with him, he's taken massive risks in his career before. Apocalypse Now is a case in question. I think for fans of this director, they'll be really curious to see the movie. And perhaps if you're not a fan, you'll still be really curious to see the film behind the headlines, and it should be seen on the big screen.
OK, well, that's noted. Indeed, we have been speaking to Mr. Coppola about his latest film and about much more. You can catch that interview here on France 24 next week. Now to something very different. A star turn from British actor James McAvoy in the horror film Speak No Evil. We can see a photo of him in the lead role there, looking quite gory.
Yeah, quite gory. There's certain moments in the movie where this character, James McAvoy, is playing Patrick. He's about to come through the door, and it feels really reminiscent of The Shining and Jack Nicholson.
Aye, but could it be anywhere as good as The Shining?
Well, could anything be really as good as The Shining if you're talking about the horror genre? But you should certainly see this movie for James McAvoy's star turn. He really steals the show. Speak No Evil is it's directed by James Watkins, and it's made by Blumhouse, of course, so very solid horror credentials there. And it's a remake of a really good Danish film from 2022, also called Speak No Evil, directed by Christian Tafdrup. And I really enjoyed this movie at the time because it was such an original idea that you would possibly entrust yourself to people that you barely knew, that you really, didn't know at all, and what they could possibly do to you. Now, this version stars Mackenzie Davis, Scoots McNairy, and Aisling Franciosi alongside McAvoy. And like its predecessor, it's a whole play on middle-class horror. They basically go to Tuscany, this couple go to Tuscany, they meet a couple who's a lot more fun than they are, they're invited to go and stay with them, and before they know it, they're on a mini break, and are these people really who they seem to be?
Sounds intriguing and very scary. Well, let's take a look at the film.
Agnes, why don't you and Aunt show us the dance that you've been working on?
And what is wrong with you? Just feel the rhythm in your feet. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the one.
What is wrong with you? I want to pack up the car and I want to leave right now.
OK, so I hear that the Danish version turned out to be pretty bleak. What sort of direction does this version of Speak No Evil go in?
Well, it does go in a slightly different version, different way to the Danish version you'll be delighted to hear her. But I think it's important to note that James McAvoy is probably the reason you might go and see this movie. He totally steals the show. He goes from, lovely to unhinged at the flick of a switch. It's really a career-defining performance.
Wow, doesn't look very comfortable. Well, finally, to our French release of the week, Meet the Barbarians, or Les Barbares, from Julie Delpy. This film premiered at the Francophone Film Festival in Angoulême in August and then in Toronto. It's pitched as a topical comedy dealing with the treatment of refugees.
Yes, indeed. And the title, Meet the Barbarians, isn't so much a commentary about the Syrian family who are moving into this charming Breton village. It's more of an inference about the inhabitants of the village and the different ways in which they greet these refugees, because they were expecting Ukrainians. And it certainly made me smile a little bit, because I was thinking of the way Ken Loach treated this topic in the UK in his recent film, The Old Oak, and the very different stylistic approach. So Meet the Barbarians is a comedy by Julie Delpy, and she wrote it some time ago. She said that she wanted to use comedy to treat this very sensitive topic, and it is getting a release at quite a topical time given the recent French elections. And, what's really interesting about it is that Delpy is also in the movie. She's starring as an extremely woke teacher. There's an all-star cast in there, including her own father, Albert Delpy. And I should mention Lauren Lafitte in there, who's playing a really quite unpleasant plumber, who's the film's main antagonist.
The neighbour that no one wants to live next door to. Well, hopefully its irreverence will win audiences over. Thank you so much for the wrap-up this week, Emma. We'll leave you with a clip of Meet the Barbarians. Otherwise, do check in with us next time on Arts 24 for more movie news and more.
En fait, ce ne sont pas des réfugiés ukrainiens qui vont venir, mais ce sont des Syriens.
C'est Joël qui va organiser l'arrivée des réfugiés.
Là, avec Blanche-Neige, la belle-mère, c'est la même situation, la même histoire, toujours. Dès qu'une femme a plus de 30 ans, c'est une sorcière, une femme superficielle, diabolique, enfin voilà. L'abêtissement du peuple est l'arme la plus puissante des dictates. Hein, les enfants?
Oui, Madame Joël.
Voilà.
On France24.com.